Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. We're back with another Texas Hill Country Fishing Report with Greg Welander of Upstream on the Fly. How you doing, Greg?
Well, hi, Marvin. I'm doing great. Since we last spoke, I recall you had asked me a question. You said, how long do you think it will take for the waters to warm up from the Arctic blast that we just experienced a couple of weeks ago? Well, Marvin, I've got an answer for you now, okay?
Lay it on me.
The answer is, yep, it's 1 week. It was 1 week for things to start to come out from the depths, right? The fish are active. And it was 1 week after we finished with that Arctic blast.
And it looks like your weather, to continue that, it's warming up. And like we talked about last time, the key really is the nighttime lows.
It is. What we've been experiencing, it's all weather dependent, okay? Since we had our last report, we've been on a warming trend. And the most important piece of this whole warming trend is the overnight lows have been in the, I'm going to say in the low 50s. There's been a couple nights here recently that we dipped down into the 40s out here in the Hill Country. Of course, that just takes a little bit longer for the water to kind of recover the next day, but I've not seen it being too big of a hill. So you're 100% right. That nighttime lows is a key. And of course, we've been hitting the upper 60s and even into the 70s for daytime highs. And the third piece is the sunlight. We've had a lot of sunny days. So the sunlight's definitely helping get the water temperatures up there in the high 50s and low 60s, which is where we want it to be.
Yeah. And the white bass are running as a result.
Yes, they are. It's actually being a pretty good year for white bass now. We've not had any measurable rainfall, up to this point. And there's been a few days we've had a little bit of rain, but we haven't had the downpours to create the runoffs. And there is some rain in the forecast. It's coming up here this coming weekend. Not really sure what the prediction is on how much rain, if it's going to be enough to actually run off. But as we well know, that a white bass leave the lake in which they live, and they run up tributaries. And the tributaries have got to have some sort of water flow, okay? Whether that water flow is coming out of a dam upstream, or if it's just, the stream itself flowing. But what I'm seeing in the Central Texas area, that the white bass are in all the tributaries off of all of our main lakes. However, they're not where they normally are in years past, and in years past when we have a significant amount of rain. So what that means is the fish are downstream of where they typically are, and they're a little bit closer to the lake. And that's, basically having to change gears a little bit and do a little exploring, but the white bass are definitely running, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it, and I'm glad to see it happening. We're kind of going into our second week of a white bass run. Midweek of last week, we were catching a lot of males. And so for folks that maybe don't understand the process, first off, you've got white bass, the males move up the stream, up the river. And then later on, you'll have the females come in, and they'll all get together and do their spawning activities. So midweek last week, we saw males, but then over this weekend, which was basically about 5 days from when, we were catching males, the females are actually now outnumbering the males. So that's a good thing. That means we're catching bigger fish. We're catching white bass right now that are pushing 16 inches in length. And even the males are bigger than what I've seen in prior years. So that means there must have been a good white bass spawn last year. So the white bass population is pretty healthy. And, we're finding fish in the pools. Okay, so the pools are kind of associated with the sandy gravel shoals. Okay, and we're catching. I mean, we were on the water on Sunday. We were catching a fish every cast, and when it slowed down, you were catching a fish every 2 or 3 casts. So it didn't take but maybe 3 hours, and you're kind of going, okay, I think we've had enough. I think it's time to go do something else. Go grab a beer, or maybe go look for some largemouth. But yeah, we've been catching over 100 fish, in a few hours out on the river, which is a lot of fun. But after a while, it does get a little monotonous, and it's time to quit.
Yeah. And it's almost funny because, I mean, if you're catching them on every cast, I don't even know, are there even tips or techniques for white bass?
Well, there are. And before we jump into that, one thing I wanted to add is that, when we're out chasing white bass, we're catching some largemouth. And we've even caught some freshwater drum as well, which, down in the South, they're referred to as a Gasper goo, but they're actually in the drum family. And what I've noticed, here in the hill country, we're kind of spoiled. We got a lot of clear water, but I'm seeing some bigger females up shallow, and they're up there grabbing the sun. They're up, trying to warm up. And when I say shallow, I mean their backs are just inches from below the surface of the water. I mean, it's real crazy just to see a bass, a 4 or 5 pound bass, sitting almost, to where you would never even think a fish would be sitting. And it's more so because they're trying to grab some sunlight. And those females have eggs in their bellies at this time of year, and they've got to get those eggs ready to go. And we'll see the smaller buck bass, or which is basically the male bass, and those will be very receptive to wanting to eat your fly. So we're kind of just leaving the females alone, but the males are chasing down our white bass flies. So tips and techniques. Let's talk about that. So we're targeting deeper pools around the sandy and gravel shoals. And when I say deeper pools, I mean these pools are basically 4 to 7 feet deep on the majority of the rivers here in Central Texas. And as it gets later in the day, these white bass are starting to move up onto the sandbar. So it's almost like where you're standing to make casts, now the fish are starting to come up. So you basically have to take, 6, 7 steps back to get a little bit shallower, because the fish are starting to move up, and it's because they're getting ready for the evening, and they're going to start spawning. So we keep stripping our fly. We'll make our long cast out in the deep pool, and we'll keep stripping our fly right on up onto the sand flat. And they want the fly stripped fast, okay? So you want to keep that fly going as fast as you can, and that's how they hit it, okay? And that gets tiring after a while. You got to take a break. You got to go sit down. Bring a couple power bars or granolas or maybe a beer or some water, and sit down on a rock and take a break, because you're stripping that fly pretty quick. And they've not been picky on colors, okay? I mean, a lot of times they are get picky in colors, but so far in the last week and a half, it's been whatever color you've got on the end of your tippet, they will eat it. And since we are fishing clear water, a size 8 clouser is the size you really want to go with. You want to do a little bit smaller fly. And it's also because the bait fishes, the minnows and the shad are smaller at this time of year as well. And you want to use a sink tip or a full sinking line. And it's important to keep a short leader, okay? And I say short is it's about a 3-foot leader. I typically make my own leaders for my sinking lines, and kind of what I'm doing is I'm using fluorocarbon, and I'm using a 2-foot section of 16 pound, and that's going to be my butt section. And then I'm adding about a foot of fluorocarbon in the 10 to 12 pound range, and or or if you want, you can just use a flat straight 3-foot section of tippet, in 10 or 12 pounds. And I prefer fluorocarbon. And, a lot of times people will say, well, what does 10-pound equivalent in the X model? So basically your 10 to 12 pound is a 1X is generally your 10 pound and your 0X is generally your 12 pound. And that can vary, maybe by a pound or half a pound based on manufacturers. But that's pretty much the standard to go with. And then people also ask is what fly rod do I want to bring? Okay. I prefer a 5-weight, and you can go as light as a 4-weight, and you can go as heavy as a 6-weight. But right now, on one of these fisheries that I've been fishing, I would kind of stay with a 5 or 6-weight just because the fish are bigger, and they don't give up. They like a tussle. They will pull, and even taking a fiberglass 6-weight out there would be fun as well for some of the guys that are into fiberglass rods. I don't think I would take a 4-weight fiberglass out there because it's going to take you a little bit longer to get that guy in, and have that thing noodled up in no time as soon as you get a white bass on. But as far as the largemouth go, I really haven't yet started spending any time chasing the largemouth. It's really more of a bycatch right now. We're seem to be catching largemouth on the same small size 8 clousers that we're throwing for the white bass. And but I do know that all of our reservoirs and some of our popular streams for largemouth in Guadalupe, say like the Lower Colorado River, they're starting to come into play now. And your crawfish, fishing a little bit deeper, a little bit slower, and also your bait fish patterns. And don't be working your bait fish patterns fast like we are for the white bass. You want to strip them a little bit slower because the fish are still kind of lethargic and are just starting to come into it. But there we have it, Marvin. The start of March as we head into some of the year's best fishing here in the Texas Hill Country.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or send them to us on our Facebook or Instagram page. If we use your question, I'll send you some articulate fly swag, and you'll get into a drawing for something cool from Greg at the end of the season. And Greg, before I let you hop, why don't you let folks know where they can find you so they can book you and fish with you?
Well, you can go find me on my website, which is upstreamonthefly.com. Or if you're on social media, head on over to either Facebook or Instagram, and I'm under Upstream on the Fly.
Well, there you go. And folks, you owe it to yourself to take advantage of this almost spring weather and get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Greg.
Tight lines, Marvin.